Now what we have to do is rebuild a couple of these cylinders. I may have already shown you, but this cylinder here, leaking pretty bad. The packing's gone. This cylinder here, also leaking pretty bad. So that'll be the next phase of this project, is to get those cylinders off, get them torn apart, new seals, repacking, and get them back on the machine. At that point, once we get that all addressed, the customer asked us to look at the pins and bushings on the blade, but I have a large suspicion that repacking these cylinders is going to significantly help. He says right now he's not able to have enough pressure to cut down into the ground because there's too much slop. I think it's because there's not enough hydraulic oil in the system. As you saw, it's jerky trying to raise it up. That's from these cylinders leaking so much. So we'll get these rebuilt, we'll top off the fluids, and we'll take it outside and test it off. All right, so you can see I'm just getting the head here started. So this is gonna be a challenge, but if I had a second person here, this would be a lot easier. Alrighty, who would have known? Probably anybody besides me. Look at that. It already is starting to come off of there. Alright, that was a struggle, but finally got it out. Once again, the service manual makes it sound like, oh yeah, you just twist and pull, it comes right out. This took some force. So now we have to see if we can get the piston out. It seems to me that every time it gets to that groove there, it gets hung up. Maybe it's because there's junk in there. Maybe it's because I didn't pull quick enough. I don't know, but here goes nothing. Great. Let's see if I can get any of this junk out of there. Nope, didn't do it either. All right, finally, after all of that, whew. All right, there's the damaged seals up in there. Now this shaft does have two spots on it that maybe with a little emery cloth we could do a little bit with, but for the most part, unless he decided to replace this, he's only going to get such decent results. All right, we need to get this seal out of here. All right, well, that was a seal. No wonder the thing was leaking. So mainly what I'm looking for is to see what that wiper seal is supposed to look like. You know, it's funny, when I first got this in the mail, I saw these metal rods in here and I was like, huh, that must be how they keep everything packaged nicely so the seals don't get crushed. Joke's on me. They go inside the cylinder to retain the gland. Okay. Yeah, so it looks like that's got to come out of there. All right, sorry the camera died there, but we got our new wiper seal installed, the new internal seals installed, and the ones out here on this external face installed. So the gland should be all done. Might just have to wipe it down. Here's the piston. So we need to redo the piston. So take this off. The centerpiece there is quite hard. When rebuilding cylinders, it's really important to have a nice pick set. This pick set's literally from Harbor Freight, so when I mean nice, it doesn't mean that you have to have an expensive one. It just means that ones that can actually grip or get underneath seals without tearing into them. Now, since I'm just trying to get the old seals out, it's okay if I damage them or stab my finger. That's cool too. That time I sliced through my finger. Wow. All right. That sucks. All right, so to get that off, I just broke it since I just cut my finger open. And there's another O-ring down in here that we need to replace. So once you get your hook underneath there, or your pick, it's pretty easy to get the seals out of there. But until you do, you just got to be really careful you don't scratch any of these surfaces. Hydraulics have a very, very tight tolerance, so you want to maintain good condition parts, or else you can still get oil to flow past the seals. So just wiping this stuff down a little bit. I did notice when I was draining the oil out of the cylinder, there's definitely some contaminants. I wouldn't say any of it's metal. It just does look like it is dirty fluid. So this thing could definitely probably use a full hydraulic service. But for now, we'll just get everything cleaned up out of the cylinder and get the machine back in service and notify the customer that they should keep an eye on it. All right, so to go back together, we got our O-ring. Be careful when you're putting the O-rings over top of the edges that you don't accidentally catch a burr or something and compromise the seal. Now once again, if you get your pick underneath there, you can just kind of roll it along. The pick's got a nice smooth surface to it, so it works out really well. Works a lot better when I'm not videotaping. But all right, so that seal's in there. Then this yellow one has to go on there somehow. So once again, all of these I'm dipping in oil. I know you can't see, but make sure you properly lubricate all of your seals and packing before you attempt to put it in, because you do not want it getting torn or caught on anything. All right, we got that in there now. Now these guys, these have a split. So what you want to do anytime you have something like a piston ring or you know, this packing, anytime there's a slit in something, you want to always offset them. So if I have my slit on this side, I'll put my other slit on the other side. It's just good common practice. This way, if something makes it by one of them, it doesn't necessarily have to make it by the next one. You know, without having to navigate a different path. You just want to make it harder for that fluid to get through, if all possible. So, one thing I'm just gonna double check is I just noticed on these that they do have a top and a bottom by the looks of things. What is going on here? So see how there's, probably can't see, but there's little circles. The old ones do not have those features. If I remember correctly, the circles mean that's the side facing up. And if that's the case, then I'd have to orient that one in that direction and orient this one in the direction it's already in. Now some of you might be wondering, how do I know that? That's just from experience with like piston rings and stuff, rebuilding engines. I also know that this is the top of my piston based off of this marking, just this discoloration. I remember when I took it off, this was facing up. So at this point, the piston itself, the packing has been redone. The gland, the seals have been installed, internal and external. And the only thing we have left over is this seal here. Now this seal goes underneath the piston on the rod, the cylinder rod. So we'll change that out since we have it. It doesn't necessarily require it to change out each time, but since we have a brand new one, we will do it and not have to worry about that failing down the road. Let's see if we can get you guys turned around here. Try to find a clean spot on these rags. So here's the old seal. This one doesn't feel too bad, but once again, we're not going to risk it. To be this far into the cylinder, and not change it is pretty silly. So now, one thing is, these threads can be sharp, they can have burrs on them, so we really want to try to be careful when we're putting this on. A lot of times you could put a piece of shim stock or something thin, even if we put like a piece of plastic or something over it. Let's find something to cover that. All right, so I just used literally a plastic bag, get everything lubed up, and this will help you ensure that you don't get any burrs when you're putting that seal on. All right, that's good to go. Let's clean up this cylinder rod a little bit. Now I know it looks like I just went over top of that seal, that brand new seal with brake clean, but I didn't. I stopped before it. Now, don't forget to put the gland on before you put the piston on. So everything in here has been lubricated, has oil on it. I'm just wiping out the bottom section here. Make sure there's no debris on it. We're gonna slide this on nice and gently. Okay, that's on. Here's our piston. Remember, our discoloration was pointed up. Now this is a slight taper fit, so that will snug up as we get our nut on there. Once we find where our nut went. You know, it's right there in front of me. All right, good one. As I've been saying to myself lately, a lot of these projects would be much easier and go a lot faster if I didn't spend so much time wandering around looking for the tool, or in this case, the nut that I need to complete my task at hand. So I really, really need to work on my organization skills here in the shop. Now, let's see if we can do this gently. Now, I don't know if there's a specific torque for that nut, but I do know a lot of times they are pretty tight. I will reference the manual, and if there is a torque spec, I will do that. But for now, I think that's plenty tight. So at this point, all we really need to do is inspect the inside of that barrel, wipe it down, give it a little coating of oil, and then we need to very carefully install this into the cylinder and make sure that none of this gets destroyed when it's getting inserted into the cylinder. All right, so I struggled, but I got that back on. Forgot the camera was off. So now we got to put the gland back in. And if you remember how much of a pain it was to get it off, we'll see how much of a pain it is to get it back in. Now, I know that's probably not the best way. Put a cylinder back together, but all right. Now, so this step, I just want to give you guys a closer look at. Once I find my necessary tooling. All right, anyway, basically what I'm trying to show you is, I was trying to look for a flashlight, but inside here, it's probably hard to see, there's a hole down inside that slit. And what we're gonna do is take one of these rods that came with a cylinder rebuild kit and hook this down inside that hole, and then we're gonna rotate the head of the gland around in a circle, and this is gonna conform to the shape and the diameter that we need. Maybe. That's right. Before we do this, we gotta swap sides so it'll keep it. I guess you just cut this old girl off. Oh boy. How do you, guess you just do it with the grinder, huh? Make a little bit of a mark on there where we need to be roughly. Perfect. It's in there. And the cylinder's rebuilt. Thank you for bearing with me on that. If I had known about this device here, I would have had the cylinder apart a lot easier than originally. But this is all put back together. And for the meantime, we will throw these caps on and keep all the contaminants out of the brand new cylinder. And the only thing left we have to do now is, before I throw this in, I'm just going to double check that the pins fit nicely inside these bushings. If not, I'm going to take note of which ones need to be replaced and order them up. But other than that, we got to rebuild one of the angle cylinders now, and then this project should be pretty much all done. So I am working on the angle cylinder that goes on the machine. You can see it was leaking pretty significantly, and we have found out why it is leaking. As you can see, the rod itself is actually bent, and there is pitting on the cylinder surface right where it would sit at its basically neutral length. I have reached out to the customer to see how he wants to approach this. He has indicated that if I can attempt to bend it back with my press slightly, to do so, but not to waste much time, and basically put new seals on it, put it back together. He claims he doesn't use this machine very often, and he probably doesn't, especially now that I just recently sold my John Deere 450 to him. So let's get this torn apart the rest of the way. We'll have to make some type of V-blocks to hold the cylinder in while we put it in the press. We'll give it a couple of shots, and then if we can straighten it out, great. If not, throw some seals on it, put it back together, and call it a day. That was smart. I didn't realize there's that much oil in there. That made an absolute mess. Yikes. I think I'll take that. Now, one thing we could do is we could use a dial indicator and rotate this, but if you haven't noticed already, this head here I think is also bent in relationship to the rod, and that's probably how the rod got bent from the beginning. These bushings have quite a bit of slop in them, and I'm sure they were pushing something that they shouldn't have been, and they got things all bent up. But that rod looks way smoother or straighter, so I think at this point we'll replace all the seals, put the cylinder back together, put it back on the machine, and hope it works. All right, cylinder number 2, rebuilt, straightened, ready to be put back in the machine. Like I said, I did exactly what the customer asked me to do.